Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books here at 3402 Radha Lane, just off of 34th and a half Street, 77018, just in case you want to send letters or packages. You can do it. We'll accept them. Just down the street from Sri Sri Radha Nilamadava's beautiful temple, here in the ISKCON Sannyasi quarters, otherwise known as the priest residence. And I'd like to welcome all of you from cyberspace. Thank you. I found out today that we now have 1,305 followers. Yes. So, Hare Krishna. And we'd like to offer a special and affectionate welcome to a newcomer, Chris. Hare Krishna, Chris. And I can tell by looking at him, he's a spiritual seeker, a serious spiritual seeker. So we welcome him. Krishna in the heart has brought you here to hear. So for your benefit, I'm going to just give a little background of what we're reading. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. We're reading from the Vedic literatures. The Vedic literatures are a sound in the Sanskrit language, eternal sound that are co-existent, co-eternal existent with Krishna. And there's 4 original Vedas, and there's a section of those 4 original Vedas called the Upanishads, 108 Upanishads. And then a literary incarnation of Krishna came about 5,000 years ago and divided the original Veda into 4 and wrote a commentary to bring it all together to make it more easily understandable for the people of this age, which, in case you didn't notice, were not so qualified to hear these kinds of things than in the previous ages. So to make it easier for us, he wrote the Vedanta Sutra. And then, to make it even easier for us, he wrote the Mahabharata. You may have heard of the Mahabharata, the greater history of India, Bharatvarsha. And then he wasn't satisfied still, and the Puranas, in the 18 Puranas, and he wasn't satisfied still, which is inconceivable because no other person in the history of the universe has ever compiled so much transcendental literature than that. So why shouldn't he be satisfied? So then Narada Muni, his spiritual master, shows up just at that moment, and Vyasadeva was able to ask him, why am I not satisfied? Look into my heart, you can see. You're my spiritual master, you can see. Why am I not satisfied after doing all of this? And then he said, because you've given a very detailed exposition of the Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda and Upasana Kanda of the Vedas, which means Karma Kanda means ritualistic ceremonies for improving one's position in this material world, ending up in the heavenly planets, heaven. And then speculative knowledge of how to discriminate between matter and spirits. And you've given all these things and the histories of the universe. But you haven't actually focused on the summum bonum of all those things, the goal of all those things, and therefore you're not satisfied. So Vyasadeva went into trance and he drew the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we're going to be reading from today, from the ether into his heart, and then wrote it down. This is an eternal sound which describes the absolute truth in the most comprehensive way available in this universe, called the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And you're about to hear a section of it, a little section of it. There's 18,000 verses and we're going to read a few of them.
In what relationship does this work that we're reading from have to the Bhagavad Gita?
Bhagavad Gita is a chapter of the Mahabharata. It's Krishna speaking the essence of the Vedas.
But that's not what we're reading from today.
What we're reading from today is Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And towards the end of this work, Krishna comes again and speaks the Gita, but in a more elaborate form. Fills in details. Because this book describes Krishna's pastimes, both his own personal original pastimes and the pastimes of his incarnations that appear periodically throughout the history of the universe. So we're going to hear about one of them today, Prthu, King Prthu, the first official king of the earth. Yeah. That's just the background for you. Hare Krishna. Okay, before we hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're going to read a prayer by Sanatana Goswami, who lived about between 400 and 500 years ago. And he was the senior disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was the most recent appearance of Krishna on the earth. This is a glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam by Sanatana Goswami, who spent more time with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being instructed than anyone else on earth. So he kind of understands it as deeply as anybody. We'll read the Sanskrit and then the English. And if my voice sounds a little gravelly than usual, that's because I stopped eating about exactly 2 minutes before I walked in the door. Okay. Where's Pranata Karuna? You know?
He would take care of the kitchens and stuff.
Acha, he'll come. Okay. Srimad Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdipi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Duritaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshanayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Manistadagamad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin atini chochatakara hanamunchagadachin mam prem narit kantayospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we've reached the 4th canto, 16th chapter, text 16. King Prthu, a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has appeared. And so many personalities came from all over the universe to greet him. And one by one, they're offering prayers to him. Text 16. Huh? Oh, 6. 16:6. Sorry. There was a 6 in it. Okay. Text 6. This King Prthu will be as powerful as the sun god. And just as the sun god equally distributes his sunshine to everyone, King Prthu will distribute his mercy equally. Similarly, just as the sun god evaporates water for 8 months and during the rainy season returns it profusely, this king will also exact taxes from the citizens and return these monies in times of need. Purport. The process of tax exaction is very nicely explained in this verse. Tax exaction is not meant for the sense gratification of the so-called administrative heads. Tax revenues should be distributed to the citizens in times of need, during emergencies such as famine or flood. Tell that to Puerto Rico. Tax revenues should never be distributed amongst governmental servants in the form of high salaries and various other allowances. In Kali Yuga, however, the position of the citizens is very horrible because taxes are exacted in so many forms and are spent for the personal comforts of the administrators. The example of the sun in this verse is very appropriate. The sun is many millions of miles away from the earth, and although the sun does not actually touch the earth, it manages to distribute clouds all over the planet by extracting water from the oceans and seas. And in due course of time, the clouds pour water on the earth during the rainy season. As an ideal king, King Prthu would execute all this business in the village and state as expertly as the sun. Text 7. This King Prthu will be very, very kind to all the citizens. Even though a poor person may trample over the king's head by violating the rules and regulations, the king, out of his causeless mercy, will be forgetful and forgiving. See, Krishna had the seat all ready for you. This King Prthu will be very, very kind to all the citizens. Even though a poor person may trample over the king's head by violating the rules and regulations, the king, out of his causeless mercy, will be forgetful and forgiving. As a protector of the world, he will be as tolerant as the earth itself. Purport. King Prthu is herein compared to the earthly planet as far as his tolerance is concerned. Although the earth is always trampled upon by men and animals, it still gives food to them by producing grains, fruits, and vegetables. As an ideal king, Maharaj Prthu is compared to the earthly planet, for even though some citizens might violate the rules and regulations of the state, he would still be tolerant and maintain them with fruits and grains. In other words, it is the duty of the king to look after the comforts of the citizens, even at the cost of his own personal convenience. This is not the case, however, in Kali Yuga. For in Kali Yuga, the kings and heads of state enjoy life at the cost of taxes exacted from the citizens. Such unfair taxation makes the people dishonest, and the people try to hide their income in so many ways. Eventually, the state will not be able to collect taxes, and consequently will not be able to meet its huge military and administrative expenses. Everything will collapse, and there'll be a shutdown of the government. Oh, excuse me. That was me. That was me. That wasn't in the text, but it kind of fit in there. I'm an editor. What can I say? I do this. Everything will collapse, and there will be chaos and disturbance all over the state. This, by the way, this purport was written in 1970 something. No, fourth canto means 73, 74 at the latest. Text 8. Text 8. Nixon. When who, by the way, got more popular votes than any other president in the history of the country.
Wow.
So much for democracy. Okay. So much for the intelligence of the people in general. Okay. Text 8. When there is no rainfall and the citizens are in great danger due to the scarcity of water, this royal personality of Godhead will be able to supply rains exactly like the heavenly King Indra. Thus, he will very easily be able to protect the citizens from drought. Purport. King Prthu is very appropriately compared to the sun and the demigod Indra. King Indra of the heavenly planets is in charge of distributing water over the earth and other planetary systems. It is indicated that King Prthu would arrange for the distribution of rainfall personally if Indra failed to discharge his duty properly. Sometimes the king of heaven, Indra, would become angry at the inhabitants of the earth if they did not offer sacrifices to appease him. King Prthu, however, being the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, did not depend on the mercy of the heavenly king. It is foretold herein that if there would be a scarcity of rain, King Prthu would manage to counteract the deficiency by virtue of his godly powers. Such powers were also exhibited by Lord Krishna when he was present in Vrindavan. Indeed, when Indra poured incessant water in Vrindavan for 7 days, the inhabitants were protected by Krishna, who raised Govardhan Hill over their heads as a great umbrella. Thus Lord Krishna is also known as Govardhana Dari. Text 9. This King Prthu Maharaj, by virtue of his affectionate glances and beautiful moon-like face, which is always smiling with great affection for the citizens, will enhance everyone's peaceful life. Text 10. The reciters continued, no one will be able to understand the policies the king will follow. His activities will also be very confidential, and it will not be possible for anyone to know how he will make every activity successful. His treasury will always remain unknown to everyone. He will be the reservoir of unlimited glories and good qualities, and his position will be maintained and covered just as Varuna, the deity of the seas, is covered all around by water. Purport. There is a predominating deity for all the material elements, And Varuna, or Pracheta, is the predominating deity of the seas and the oceans. From outward appearances, the seas and oceans are devoid of life, but a person acquainted with the sea knows that within this water exist many varieties of life. The king of that underwater kingdom is Varuna. We got a chair for him right here. Doctor, there's your own chair right here. It's in the corner, but that doesn't mean that you're in trouble. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. This is Dr. Pokala, otherwise known as Hari Balab, a great soul, devotee of Lord Krishna. Okay.
He does a 5-minute arti for about 20 minutes. Just the ocean.
The king of that underwater kingdom is Varuna. Just as no one can understand what is going on beneath the sea, no one can understand what policy King Prthu was following to make everything successful. Indeed, King Prithu's path of diplomacy was very grave. In other words, he didn't tweet every 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm on. His success was made possible because he was a reservoir of unlimited glorified qualities. The word upaguptabhita is very significant in this verse. It indicates that no one would know the extent of the riches King Prthu would confidentially keep. The idea is that not only the king, but everyone should keep his hard-earned money confidentially and secretly, so that in due course of time the money can be spent for good, practical purposes. In Kali Yuga, however, the king or government has no well-protected treasury, and the only means of circulation is currency notes made of paper. Thus, in times of distress, the government artificially inflates the currency by simply printing papers, and this artificially raises the price of commodities, and the general condition of the citizens becomes very precarious. Did you know that right now in San Francisco, California, if you have an income of $116,000, you're in poverty level. And you can't get, many times you can't get housing. I'll read this last sentence again. That puts this into proper perspective. Thus, in times of distress, the government artificially inflates the currency by simply printing papers, and this artificially rises the price of commodities and rent. And the general condition of the citizens becomes very precarious. Thus, keeping one's money very secretly is an old practice, for we find this practice present even during the reign of Maharaj Prthu. Just as the king has the right to keep his treasury confidential and secret, the people should also keep their individual earnings a secret. There is no fault in such dealings. The main point is that everyone should be trained in the system of varnashram dharma, so that the money is spent only for good causes and nothing else. Text 11. King Prthu was born of the dead body of King Vena as fire is produced from arani wood. Thus King Prthu will always remain just like fire, and his enemies will not be able to approach him. Indeed, he will be unbearable to his enemies, for although staying very near him, they will never be able to approach him, but will have to remain as if far away. No one will be able to overcome the strength of King Prthu. Purport. Arani wood is a kind of fuel used to ignite fire by friction. At the time of performing sacrifices, one can ignite a fire from arani wood. Although born of his dead father, King Prthu would still remain just like fire. Just as fire is not easily approached, King Prthu would be unapproachable by his enemies, even though they would appear to be very near him. Text 12. King Prthu would be able to see all the internal and external activities of every one of his citizens. Still, no one will be able to know his system of espionage, and he himself will remain neutral regarding all matters of glorification or vilification paid to him. He will be exactly like air, the life force within the body, which is exhibited internally and externally, but is always neutral to all affairs. Text 13. Since this king will always remain on the path of piety, he will be neutral to both his son and the son of his enemy. If the son of his enemy is not punishable, he will not punish him. But if his own son is punishable, he will immediately punish him. Purport. These are the characteristics of an impartial ruler. It is the duty of a ruler to punish the criminal and give protection to the innocent. King Prthu was so neutral that if his own son was punishable, he would not hesitate to punish him. On the other hand, if the son of his enemy were innocent, he would not engage in some intrigue in order to punish him. Text 14. Just as the sun god expands his shining rays up to the Arctic region without impedance, the influence of King Prthu will cover all tracts of land up to the Arctic region and will remain undisturbed as long as he lives. Purport. Although the Arctic region was not visible to ordinary persons, the sun shines there without impediment. Just as no one can check the sunshine from spreading all over the universe, no one could check the influence and reign of King Prthu, which would remain undisturbed as long as he lived. The conclusion is that the sunshine and the sun god cannot be separated, nor could King Prthu and his ruling strength be separated. His rule over everyone would continue without disturbance. Thus the king could not be separated from his ruling power. Text 15. This king will please everyone by his practical activities, and all of his citizens will remain very satisfied. Because of this, the citizens will take great satisfaction in accepting him as the ruling king. Text 16. The king will be firmly determined and always situated in truth. He will be a lover of the Brahminical culture and will render all service to old men and give shelter to all surrendered souls, giving respect to all. He will always be merciful to the poor and innocent. Purport. The word Vriddha Sevaka is very significant. Vriddha means old men. Vriddha means old men. There are two kinds of old men. One is old by age, and another is old by knowledge. This Sanskrit word indicates that one can be older by the advancement of knowledge. King Prthu was very respectful to the Brahmanas, and he protected them. He also protected persons advanced in age. Whatever the king would decide to do, no one would be able to stop. That is called Dridha Sankalpa, or Dridha Vrata. Means strong vow, strong desire. Text 17. The king will respect all women as if they were his mother, and he will treat his own wife as the other half of his body. He will be just like an affectionate father to his citizens, and he will treat himself as the most obedient servant of the devotees, who always preach the glories of the Lord. Purport. A learned man treats all women except his wife as his mother, looks on others' property as garbage in the street, and treats others as he would treat his own self. These are the symptoms of a learned person as described by Chanika Pandit. This should be the standard for education. Education does not mean having academic degrees only. One should execute what he has learned in his personal life. These learned characteristics were verily manifest in the life of King Prthu. Although he was the king, he treated himself as a servant of the Lord's devotees. According to Vedic etiquette, if a devotee came to a king's palace, the king would immediately offer his own seat to him. The word Brahmavadinam is very significant. Brahmavadi refers to the devotees of the Lord. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are different terms for the Supreme Brahman, and the Supreme Brahman is Lord Krishna. This is accepted in Bhagavad Gita 10:12 by Arjuna. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. Thus the word Brahmavadinam refers to the devotees of the Lord. The state should always serve the devotees of the Lord, and the ideal state should conduct itself according to the instructions of the devotee. Because King Prthu followed this principle, he is highly praised. Text 18. The king will consider all embodied living entities as dear as his own self, and he will always be increasing the pleasures of his friends. He will intimately associate with liberated persons, and he will be a chastising hand to all impious persons. Purport. The word Dehinam refers to those who are embodied. The living entities are embodied in different forms, which number 8,400,000 species. All of these were treated by the king in the same way he would treat himself. In this age, however, so-called kings and presidents do not treat all of the living entities as their own self. Most of them are meat-eaters, and even though they may not be meat-eaters, they may pose themselves to be very religious and pious. They still allow cow slaughter within their state. Such sinful heads of state cannot actually be popular at any time. Another significant word in this verse is mukta sangha prasangaha, which indicates that the king was always associating with liberated persons. Text 19. This king is the master of the three worlds, and he is directly empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is without change. He is an incarnation of the Supreme, known as Shaktavesha Avatar. Being a liberated soul and fully learned, he sees all material varieties as meaningless because their basic principle is nations. Purport. The reciters of these prayers are describing the transcendental qualities of Prthu Maharaj. These qualities are summarized in the words Sakshad Bhagavan. This indicates that Maharaj Prthu is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead and therefore possesses unlimited good qualities. Being an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Prthu could not be equaled in his excellent qualities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is fully equipped with 6 kinds of opulences, and King Prthu was also empowered in such a way that he could display these 6 opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in full. The word kutastha, meaning without change, is also very significant. There are 2 kinds of living entities, Nitya Mukta and Nitya Baddha. A Nitya Mukta never forgets his position as the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who does not forget this position and knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord is Nitya Mukta. Such a Nitya Mukta living entity represents the Supersoul as his expansion. As stated in the Vedas, Nityo Nityanam. Thus the Nitya Mukta living entity knows that he is an expansion of the Supreme Nitya, or the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead. Being in such a position, he sees the material world with a different vision. The living entity who is Nitya Baddha, or eternally conditioned, sees the material varieties as being actually different from one another. In this connection, we should remember that the embodiment of the conditioned soul is considered to be like a dress. One may dress in different ways, but a really learned man does not take dresses into consideration. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 5.18, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shupake Cha Panditak Samadarshinaha. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, outcast. Thus a learned man does not look upon the dresses that externally cover the living entity, but sees the pure soul within the varieties of dress, and knows very well that the varieties of dress are the creation of nations, avidya rachitam. Being a Shaktavesha avatar, empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prthu Maharaj did not change his spiritual position, and consequently there was no possibility of his viewing the material world as reality. Text 20. This king, being uniquely powerful and heroic, will have no competitor. He will travel around the globe on his victorious chariot, holding his invincible bow in his hand, and appearing exactly like the sun, which rotates in its own orbit from the south. Purport. In this verse, the word yatarka indicates that the sun is not fixed, but is rotating in its orbit, which is set by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita and also in other parts of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. In the 5th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is stated that the sun rotates in its own orbit at the rate of 16,000 miles per second. Similarly, Brahma Samhita states, Yas Yagyaya Brahmati Sam Pritakala Chakra. The sun rotates in its own orbit according to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conclusion is that the sun is not fixed in one place. As far as Prthu Maharaj is concerned, it is indicated that his ruling power would extend all over the world. The Himalaya mountains, from which the sunrise is first seen, is called Udayachala or Udayadri. It is herein indicated that Prthu Maharaj's reign over the world would cover even the Himalaya mountains and extend to the borders of all oceans and seas. In other words, his reign would cover the entire planet. Another significant word in this verse is Naradeva, as described in previous verses. The qualified king, be he King Prthu or any other king who rules over the state as an ideal king, should be understood to be God in human form. According to Vedic culture, the king is honored as the Supreme Personality of God because he represents Narayana, who also gives protection to the citizens. He is therefore Nata, or the proprietor. Even Sanatana Goswami gave respect to the Nawab Hussain Shah as Naradeva, although the Nawab was Muhammadan. A king or governmental head must therefore be so competent to rule over the state that the citizens will worship him as God in human form. That is the perfectional stage for the head of any government or state. Text 21. A lot of principles that describe what the Vedic culture was and how it worked and how the persons were who administered over it. Text 21. When the king travels all over the world, other kings, as well as the demigods, will offer him all kinds of presentations. Their queens will also consider him the original king, who carries in his hands the emblems of club and disc, and will sing of his fame, for he will be as reputable as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. As far as reputation is concerned, King Prthu is already known as the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Adi Rajam means the original king. The original king is Narayana, or Lord Vishnu. People do not know that the original king, or Narayana, is actually the protector of all living entities. As confirmed in the Vedas, Eko Bahunam Yo Vididhati Kaman, Kata Upanishad 2.2.13. Actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is maintaining all living entities. The king, or Nardeva, is his representative. As such, the king's duty is to personally supervise the distribution of wealth for the maintenance of all living entities. If he does so, he will be as reputable as Narayana. As mentioned in this verse, Tad Yasha, Prthu Maharaj was actually carrying with him the reputation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he was actually reigning over the world in that capacity. We should send these purports to a few of the newly elected personalities in our government. Huh?
Yeah.
Good idea. Text 22, got a few names in mind. Translation. This king, this protector of the citizens, is an extraordinary king and is equal to the Prajapati demigods. For the living facility of all citizens, he will milk the earth, which is like a cow. Not only that, but he will level the surface of the earth with the pointed ends of his bow, breaking all the hills exactly as King Indra, the heavenly kingdom, breaks mountains with his powerful thunderbolt. This means that during his reign, the lands first started being cultivated. Before this, there was no cultivation of land, agriculture, development. Everything was hanging from trees, and people could come and take something from the tree free and eat it. One fruit, that's all you need for the day. A little different atmosphere. Text 23. When the lion travels in the forest with its tail turned upward, all menial animals hide themselves. Similarly, when King Prthu will travel over his kingdom and vibrate the string of his bow, which is made of the horns of goats and bulls, and is irresistible in battle, all demoniac rogues and thieves will hide themselves in all directions. Purport. It is very appropriate to compare a powerful king like Prthu to a lion. In India, Kshatriya kings are still called Singha, which means lion. Unless rogues, thieves, and other demoniac people in a state are afraid of the executive head, who rules the kingdom with a strong hand, there cannot be peace or prosperity in the state. Thus, it is most regrettable when a woman becomes the executive head instead of a lion-like king. In such a situation, the people are considered very unfortunate. Text 24. At the source of the river Saraswati, the king will perform 100 sacrifices, known as Ashwamedha. In the course of the last sacrifice, the heavenly King Indra will steal the sacrificial horse. Text 25. This King Prthu will meet Sanat Kumara, one of the 4 Kumaras, in the garden of his palace compound. The king will worship him with devotion and will be fortunate to receive instructions by which one can enjoy transcendental bliss. Purport. The word Vedanti refers to one who knows something or enjoys something. When a person is properly instructed by a spiritual master and understands transcendental bliss, he enjoys life. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, 1854, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakankshati. When one attains to the Brahman platform, he neither hankers nor laments. He actually partakes of transcendental blissful enjoyment. Although King Prthu was an incarnation of Vishnu, he nonetheless taught the people in his kingdom to take instructions from his spiritual master, who represents the disciplic succession. Thus one can become fortunate and enjoy a blissful life even within this material world. Thus, when a person understands Brahman, or the supreme source of everything, he enjoys a blissful life. Text 26. In this way, when the chivalrous activities of King Prthu came to be known to the people in general, King Prthu will always hear about himself and his uniquely powerful activities. Purport. To artificially advertise oneself and thus enjoy a so-called reputation is a kind of conceit. Prthu Maharaj was famous amongst the people because of his chivalrous activities. He did not have to advertise himself artificially. One's factual reputation cannot be covered. Text 27. No one will be able to disobey the orders of Prthu Maharaj. After conquering the world, he will completely eradicate the threefold miseries of the citizens. Then he will be recognized all over the world. At that time, both the Suras and the Asuras will undoubtedly glorify his magnanimous activities. Purport.
Who are the Suras and Asuras?
Suras are the pious people,
Yeah.
and the Asuras are the atheists.
Okay. Yes.
Purport. At the time of Maharaj Prthu, there's a popular lad. Purport. At the time of Maharaj Prthu, the world was ruled by one emperor, although there were many subordinate states. Just as there are many united states in various parts of the world, in olden days the entire world was ruled through many states. But there was a supreme emperor who ruled over all subsidiary states. As soon as there were some discrepancies in the maintenance of the Varnashram system, the emperor would immediately take charge of these small states. The word Upatita Loka Shalya indicates that Maharaj Prthu completely uprooted all the miseries of his citizens. Wow. We need a little bit of that, I think. The word Shalya means piercing thorns. There are many kinds of miserable thorns that pierce the citizens of a state. But all competent rulers, even up to the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, uprooted all the miserable conditions of the citizens. It is stated that during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, there did not even exist severe cold. What is this called? Polar vortex? It is stated that during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, there did not even exist severe cold or scorching heat, nor did the citizens suffer from any kind of mental anxiety. This is the standard of good government. My God, this is a great... We got to send this purport out, right? Yeah, there you go. There you go. Such a peaceful and prosperous government, devoid of anxiety, was established by Prthu Maharaj. Thus the inhabitants of both saintly and demoniac planets were all engaged in glorifying the activities of Maharaj Prthu. Persons or nations anxious to spread their influence all over the world should consider this point. If one is able to eradicate completely the threefold miseries of the citizens, he should aspire to rule the world. One should not aspire to rule for any political or diplomatic considerations. Oops. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 16th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Praise of King Prthu by the Professional Reciters. Okay, we're going to stop the reading now, and we're going to have discussion, reflections, anything that raised. Here, Carter is going to start.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Carter.
I was just wondering, how long did his reign last for?
Oh, it's a really good question. How long did he reign? It's in this section, and forgive me for this, but I can't recall the exact time, but it was a long time, a really long time, like hundreds of thousands of years. I'll look it up for you. And I'll look it back to you. I'll look it up and I'll get back to you. Okay? I'll find out. But, judging from what it was like under his rule, it must have seemed like it was a long time. What the saying goes, my, how time flies when one's having a good time. Okay, who else is next? Okay, Damodar Shah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much. The last verse of this chapter, it says, if one is basically the last couple of sentences. If one is able to eradicate completely the threefold miseries of the citizens, you should aspire to rule the world. One should not aspire to rule for any political or diplomatic consideration. So my question is, the threefold miseries, as I understand it, is the Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, and Devika. And it is said that this universe is this universe is created in such a way that nobody can overcome that. So in this, is it a reference to say that the king should be capable enough to give spiritual education to the citizens?
Your questions are so nice, you answer them before we have to. You already answered it, yes. They're able to give spiritual direction, and therefore the citizens act in such a way that the laws of nature actually support them rather than... Because, when we act against the laws of nature, we're seeing that on the earth today. There's so many heinous activities going on to the earth, and the earth is pushing back. That's exactly what's happening. And when you read these scriptures and learn exactly how the laws of nature work, it makes so much sense. It's so clear to see that, it is man-made, the things that are happening on the earth, the sufferings that are going on from weather and unnatural disturbances, natural disturbances, So yes, but not that any king can do that. Only a king who is actually, and this is not the kind of person that's elected from a bunch of know-nothings. These kings were very highly... of course, Prthu Maharaj was an incarnation of Krishna. So he came into the world particularly empowered to do this, to do the things that these verses are describing. But even in the Vedic system in general, before the monarchy fell, and it fell, soon after when Kali Yuga started. Actually, Prthu Maharaj, as being cursed by a Brahmin boy, was the beginning of the Kali Yuga and the fall of the Brahminical culture. And then from then on, the kings would be less and less capable, And finally you can see what they are now. It's a joke. And they were trained. They were born and trained from the beginning of their birth and life. So they knew what to be. They knew how to be a king, because to do everything requires training, proper training. We can't do anything without proper training. We can't be a good mother or father, or a good child for that matter, or good anything, without proper training. Yes, Krishna Kripa.
Well, I was just wondering if this lack of mental strength is what we would refer to now as mental illness in the citizenry, because everybody is suffering so much due to these conditions.
Well, it's partly that, but it's also partly due to the fact that there's so much pollution. There's sound pollution. Now there's digital pollution, or pollution going through the ether, which is going through all of our minds and causing our minds to become weak and incapable of gathering itself and concentrating and actually contemplating things deeply. The food, the air, the water, everything is so polluted. I just read some article about the kinds of things. Now they're able, one of the benefits of their research is they're able to actually measure some of the things that are going into our food now. And all the things that we thought were very good, that's the materialistic view or materialistic way. They come up with something on their own that they think is going to solve something, and then 10 years later or 15 years later it turns out to be, cancerous or, very, very bad or whatever. In this way they just careen from making one problem worse to another problem worse to another problem worse, and now we see what's going on. Polar vortex. It's described that what do they call that? Frostbite. Frostbite can happen in the weather that was going on in some places, in states recently, would happen instantaneously, but going out into the weather, that's not natural. Yes, Matthew.
Is it true that orgonite helps to counteract those EMF radiations and make the energy fields more bioavailable? Orgonite?
Orgonite.
It's some substance, some metal or something?
Is it a mineral?
Yeah, I mean, what they say about it is that it just makes your cell phone and other electromagnetic frequencies not as damaging.
I'm not qualified scientifically to answer that question precisely, but it is a fact that every single thing in the universe has its proper usage. All the minerals, all the plants, they all have properties that are meant to be used to cure diseases and, in that sense, purify or whatever. So I can't answer the exact question. I don't have the scientific know-how. But in principle, yes. In principle, there are things that you can come close to and surround yourself with or use and digest or whatever that can help, in different ways. Yes.
Hare Krishna. I was an economics major in college, and to see the idea that the purchasing power of money is eroded by printing cash is an unpopular idea, but it's one that I share. So I was just delighted to see that 4,000 pages into Prabhupada's translation of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Well said. Well said. That your name is? Toby. I'm sorry, I forgot. I get Toby mixed up with somebody else. Tobias. No, somebody else. Toby, thank you. That was wonderful. Yeah, because wealth is supposed to be when you have something that's valuable. You know, gold, jewels, silk, spices, different grains. You know, milk.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's way ahead of his time. I mean, he's the source of the real laws of nature. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. This is only a few hundred years, you know. It wasn't that long ago that even coins in Europe and in India, they were made of, gold and silver and copper, depending on the value. And even in India, they used to have these small conch shells, and they had the currency divided up into certain numbers of conch shells, and they would actually exchange those things when you had to go across a river, or whatever you had to do. Sarva, our local saint, go ahead. You give it to us, Sarva.
We were hearing about the saintly qualities of an ideal leader, and just trying to find places where you can distribute a book and take a donation for it is quite a juggling match in these times.
Yeah.
And I remember some years ago, I printed like one issue of a newspaper, kind of a preaching newspaper, and it had the qualities of King Prthu in it. And I went to there was a Bhakti leader from Dallas who came down to Houston. I was thinking the people that really need it is the young people, so we went to some high schools, and it was like so intense, trying to give the qualities of an ideal leader, and the parents are driving at 3 o'clock to pick up their kids from high school, and they see the Hare Krishnas chanting, and it was such a clash. And at one high school, the principal came out and said, "I like you guys, but can you get the hell out of here?" Because the parents are so
freaking out.
Here's Kali Yuga, the most valuable knowledge about how to act as a leader, and it's hard to get it to the kids before they get corrupted.
Yes.
And then they're reading on the internet, they're hearing about all these really degraded leaders. So it's like they're constantly getting all this inundation of all these bad qualities of leaders who are cheating and conniving. So it's really hearing about King Prthu is amazing.
Yeah, the standard. Yeah, it's profound, and actually, because of that principle of how the standards are degrading so much, and everybody's just speculating on how to do things, and they have having the foggiest idea what they're doing. Therefore, nowadays, when most people hear this, they think this is just a myth. Not possible. Impossible. It's become so degraded they can't imagine that things could be proper. Chris.
Yes, thank you.
Please.
The first question was about when in the past, did Prthu Maharaj rule? Yeah. But the way I was interpreting everything that was read is that this is a future time when we can look forward to the reign of such a ruler. Is that a reasonable thing to look forward to hope for?
Well, time is cyclical. It goes in cycles. Just like now, of course, now the winter was a little unusually intense, but generally you have winter and summer and spring and summer, and like that, autumn and then winter, like that. In India there's 6 seasons. But like that then there's epochs and decades, and there's larger and larger cycles. And the basic cycle is actually a very long period of time. And this is all based on the movements of the planets. It's all astronomical. It's not just based on some interpretation of some quatrain that some astrological poet, wrote and left for us to try to figure out, There's actually very scientific basis of these things, of these cycles. So, in a sense, you're right. Looking at it from this perspective, we could, hope that in the future we would have this kind of king. But this was in the past. It wasn't in the future. We're hearing about the descendants of Dhruva Maharaj. In the beginning of this, of the largest cycle, well, how to explain this clearly so that you can understand? The whole cosmic body has a duration of existence. Just like our body has a duration of existence. That's the microcosmic. The macrocosmic situation is the cosmic body, the cosmic creation. And it is also being manifested and then unmanifested. Manifested and then unmanifested, because that's the nature of material existence on all levels. So the expansion of God, who has something to do with the creation of the cosmic manifestation, the whole duration of the cosmic manifestation comes into being, plays out, and is withdrawn in one breath. Confirmed. In one breath of Mahavishnu. In one breath he's breathing out, and then he's breathing in, and the whole cosmic manifestation is being created and then dissolved. Created and then dissolved. And the duration of that breath is the length of time, the lifetime of Lord Brahma, who was the first created being in each universe. There's some connection etymologically between the word Brahma and Abraham. Brahma. There's a historical relationship with that. So Lord Brahma lives for 311 trillion, 80 billion years. It's even more than the national debt of America. Not so much, only 10 times greater. But anyway, it's a length of time that we cannot conceive of. So, and that Brahma lives, that's 100 years of Brahma. Right? So it cycles. It keeps going down, the cycles. And it comes down to a Dibya Yuga. Dibya Yuga means a divine, Divya means, anyway, in this case it means complete Yuga, the cycle. There's 4 yugas in a Dibya Yuga, right? The first age is called Satya Yuga, and this event that's happening now is in that Satya Yuga. Then as that age becomes degraded over time, just like we can see with our own eyes, this is not just some kind of mumbo-jumbo philosophy or somebody speculating. We see with our own eyes that everything that has a material form over time degrades. If you leave anything, you leave anything in a room and just leave it and don't pay attention to it for 100 years or 200, it's some amount of time, and it will disintegrate over time.
I'm not a physicist, but isn't that the second law of thermodynamics?
It definitely is, serendipity, definitely. And you leave anything, and it goes to chaos rather than what Darwin says. Right? So then time is forcing people to act less good, and then the three basic modes of nature which form the material forms that we see and smell and see, touch and taste and smell, goodness, passion, and ignorance, they act kind of like three-dimensional touchy-feely colors. You know, the three basic colors of in your inkjet printer, blue, red, and yellow. They make all the colors. The combinations of those colors make all the colors. Millions and millions of colors. So like that, these three modes of nature are the first transformations that begin the process of creation and form all the different environments for living beings, the bodies of the living beings, the ecosystems that keep everything going, planetary systems, the movements of the planets and everything, especially the sun. So then it goes into Treta Yuga, the Kali Yuga. I mean the yugas increase by a factor of 2. So the basic one is Kali Yuga. That's what we're in now. It's 400,000 years. It's a little more than, but it's approximately 400,000 years. And then the next yuga before us, Dwapar Yuga, was 800,000 years, and then 1,200,000 years, and then 1,600,000. It's actually a little off. It's 1,700,000 and something. But anyway, and then one of those cycles is a Dibya Yuga, and the length of that is 4,320,000 years, and 1,000 of those is one day of Brahma, and double that is a day and night of Brahma. He lives 100 years like that. So your question is very relative, because if you look at it from Mahavishnu's point of view, I mean, the whole things are going on. Our lifetime is not even like a breath. It's like not even a. And from Krishna's point of view, because he's in Goloka Vrindavan, and he's the source of Mahavishnu and other expansions. It's not even a blink of an eye. One of our lifetimes is not even a blink of an eye. So all the things that are upsetting us when we see so much so-called quote-unquote suffering going on, and it is suffering. We're not trying to say that it's not suffering. People are suffering. But if they were spiritually realized, their suffering would be diminished proportionately. Even it's not that we don't see the sufferings, it's not that we don't experience the material nature and laws that we have to live under, but it doesn't affect us as much. So yes, Prthu Maharaj was in the Satya Yuga. Lifespans in Satya Yuga were human lifespans in Satya Yuga were 100,000 years. Treta Yuga. Good question. I want to again welcome Chris. That was a wonderful question, and you got something from me.
Is it?
Gopi Chandra Devidasi says, Dear Guru Maharaj, this may be very silly question, but I don't mind exposing my ignorance. I'm not very expert on the Chaitanya Leela, as I haven't read the Chaitanya Charitamrita yet. In the beginning, you were mentioning how Sanatana Goswami was the most intimate disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the one who got the most association. He's also senior to Rupa Goswami in age. I always imagined Rupa was the closest disciple of Lord Chaitanya because we are said to be Rupanugas, followers of Rupa Goswami. Thank you.
That instructing Rupa Goswami. But we are called Rupa Nugas, and Rupa Goswami is considered to be the most intimate disciple. But Sanatana Goswami is the senior disciple, and Rupa Goswami considered Sanatana Goswami to be his guru, his Shiksha guru. Hope that clears it up. Lord Chaitanya would instruct us, the world, through different of his disciples. Haridas Thakur was the Namacharya. He was the authority in the holy name, in chanting the holy name. Rupa Goswami was the Rasacharya. He was the Acharya of the science of rasa. And therefore he is most intimate because Lord Chaitanya came to taste the rasa of his relationship, of Krishna's relationship with Radharani. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was incarnation of philosophy, and like that, Swarup Damodar was also most intimate to Lord Chaitanya in the sense that he spent the most personal time with the Lord, serving him intimately towards the last time of his life. But when Rupa Goswami came and visited Lord Chaitanya, then Lord Chaitanya purposefully brought Swarup Damodar, who was considered the most intimate, Ramananda Roy, also very intimate, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the great philosopher, and other. They came to examine the writing of Rupa Goswami. And when they heard, after Lord Chaitanya insisted that when Lord Chaitanya insists that Rupa recite some of his writing to these great souls, great personalities who were the most expert in writing Sanskrit poetry and literature, when they heard Rupa Goswami's verses, they all became struck with wonder, including Lord Chaitanya. Roof of his place where he was staying, and by coincidence, Lord Chaitanya came along right after he did that, and he saw it, and he took it, and he read it, and he was amazed. He says, "How could this person understand my mind? Nobody can understand my mind like that, because he's God, you know." And so he took it back to Swarup Damodar, and he said, "Read this." And he said, and he read it, and he said, "Rupa Goswami wrote this. How could he understand my mind?" And then Swarup Damodar said, "There's only one possibility. And that means that you, Swarup Damodar, said, there's only one possibility, and that is that you gave your full mercy to Rupa Goswami at some time in the past. And then Lord Chaitanya admitted, oh yes, I met him in Allahabad, in Varanasi, and Dashoshameda God, I instructed him, and I saw that he was deserving of my full mercy, and therefore I gave it to him. So in that meeting, when Lord Chaitanya, Swarup Damodar, Ramananda Roy, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, all the most intimate disciples there, but when they heard Rupa Goswami, who was, by the way, the new man on the block, he came later than all the others, they were overwhelmed by his literature, by his writing. So therefore we are called Rupanugas, because even those persons, and even Lord Chaitanya, Rupa Goswami in Lord Krishna's Leela in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, is Rupa Manjari, the most intimate servant of Lalita, who is the most dearest friend of Radharani. So, ontologically, he was the youngest, spiritually, of all of them. And he had all of them controlled, even though she was a teenage girl spiritually. All the other ones were like taking his or her orders. So therefore, Rupa Goswami is the most intimate to Lord Chaitanya, and we are therefore called Rupanugas. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam. When will we be able to assist Rupa Goswami in fulfilling the orders of Lord Chaitanya? Hare Krishna.
We got one more.
One more.
I think it's a good one for the Mataji's. Vrindavaneshwari Devidasi says,
Hare Krishna Vrindavaneshwari.
It was mentioned.
The better half of Krishna Katha.
It is mentioned.
Huh? It's a convenient place to be.
Yeah.
It was mentioned that when a woman becomes a ruler, the people are very unfortunate. Can you expand on this, please? And would there be a difference in their woman ruler? When a woman ruler is a devotee?
Well, first of all, we are all equal spiritually, men and women. Mami partipapashitya yepisu papadyonia striyo vaishas tata shudras tepiyanti param gatim. That means everyone is eligible for the param gatim, the supreme destination. So all of us are equal spiritually, but materially we're not. Anybody has to just look around the room and see the difference between the male form and the female form to know that that's absolute truth. It's an absolute truth. And men or women are different. And as a result, their natures are different, their psychology is different, and physically they're different. There's never been, in the history of any sports, a record in which the male is less than the female. Never, not one. Somebody give me an example. One. Pole vault, 100-yard dash, bobsleds, nothing. Nothing. And it's a fact. Just I know you'll find exception to everything. That's your nature. But just be quiet for a second while I explain it deeply enough so that you won't confuse everybody. Okay. So to be the king, we're talking about being the king of the world. You have to be able to physically challenge and defeat any other person. Period. In battle, hand to hand. Therefore, a woman is not allowed to be the executive head, the king. Nowadays you may say, yes, but now they don't have to do that. They just stay in an office and push buttons. Of course, that's what the male rulers deal too. But it's not like that. The actual qualities of leadership is given in the Gita, and these are all created. These are laws of nature that are created by Krishna, and you can't change them. So, from my perspective or my observation over time, the world is becoming less peaceful and less peaceful and less peaceful and less peaceful. Now, I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation between, the women becoming freer and freer and freer, but it's an aspect of what's going on. It's an aspect of the degradation of human society. Srila Prabhupada was confronted with this issue, and what he said was, so you want them to be equal? And it was a female reporter, and she said, oh yes. And then I said, all right, then you arrange that half the time your husband becomes pregnant, and then half the times you can be pregnant. Can you do that? And she just shut up. Not very many people have the chutzpah, as they say. Some of us say chutzpah, to say something like that in public, to the media. And it created an uproar. And the next place he went to, there were 3 or 4, female reporters, and they were right on his case, trying to catch him and trying to get gotcha. But he showed each one of them that it was actually a fact. That doesn't mean that women aren't intelligent. There are many women who are more intelligent than men, and there are men who are more intelligent than women. But you won't see many. There may be exceptions, but you won't see many top physicists, top people in those categories, mathematicians. You will see, but relatively, you'll see very few. So it takes very special. So it is possible. It is possible. Kunti, Draupadi, these were Kshatriya women, and they were very fierce and powerful. But when it came time for the Pandavas to go into exile, they were not sent into exile. They went into exile voluntarily with their husbands because they needed protection from their husbands, because they would have been who knows what, God knows what, if they would have stayed there with all the Kurus. And Draupadi already tried to be disrobed once in front of all the men in the Kurus, which is a very, very degrading thing to any woman. So for this reason, the Vedas recommend that the woman be the power behind the man, the energy of the man, give energy to the man, but not to be the executive head. Controversy or not? We got another one over here. I know that you're...
Rati Manjari.
No, I know this. Not true.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you for dutifully and beautifully sharing the wisdom of Srila Prabhupada and the Srimad-Bhagavatam with us all. I have a small question. Tonight I heard something to the like that the Nitya Mukta is aware of that he is an expansion of the Supreme Lord. I have also heard at other times that the spiritual master is considered to be the external manifestation of the Supersoul. This always sounded quite mystical to me. Could you please comment on how we should understand this?
Everything and everyone is an expansion of the Supreme Lord. The personal expansions of the Lord are called swangsha expansions. And the individual souls, those souls are expansions of the Supreme Soul, and they are unlimited in potency. They don't all exhibit the potency to the same degree or in the same way, but they all have the potential of having the unlimited potency of Krishna. They are Krishna. He can expand himself in different forms, in different places, whenever he wants, in whatever form he wants. But they are all unlimited in potency. Therefore, he does things that no other living being can do. The jiva souls are called vibhinangsha. They are also expansions of the Supreme Person, but they are expansions, infinitesimal expansions. So the spiritual master or an empowered jiva soul, vibhinangsha, who is infinitesimal in size compared and in potency compared to Krishna, when that person is empowered by Krishna to do a particular thing that only Krishna could do, but Krishna wants the jiva soul to get credit for it, then he is called Shaktivesh. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur accepted Jesus Christ as Shaktivesh avatar, a jiva soul who was given empowered to do something that only Krishna could do. Our Srila Prabhupada, by his activities, not by any philosophical thing, but by his activities, we can accept him as Shaktivesh, especially empowered by Krishna, because he did something no one else could do. So the spiritual master is the external representation of Krishna in the sense that that is a soul, spiritual master is a soul who has agreed to repeat what Krishna says and not adulterate it, subtract or add to it from his own limited perspective. That doesn't mean that there isn't realization coming from the individual souls put into their own words, but they never deviate from the message of the Supreme Lord. And the disciplic succession is a succession of persons who are connected with Krishna to do that, to distribute Krishna consciousness around the world, according to their capacities. Not everyone has the same capacity. But some people, some philosophers or some people interpret this to mean that the spiritual master is non-different than Krishna, absolutely. That he's omniscient and omnipresent like Krishna. That's not true. The spiritual master is not Krishna literally like that. But he's called an external representation of the Supersoul because he's given the information that he needs to direct the disciple back to Godhead from Krishna. Does that answer the question? Oh, all right, Hannah. Go ahead. Go for it.
I'm not saying a word. I just wanted to...
You're not saying a word? That's unusual. Is this what you just did just now?
Yeah. I wanted to share it with the reading.
You did this right now?
Yeah.
Just a second, while you were hearing, you did this. I don't believe that you were hearing and doing it, but look at this.
Wow.
Gee, I didn't know you could do that with this machine. I guess it takes more than a machine to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing this. Very beautiful.
It's saved to your phone.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Hand me this back. I want you to know that Gora is recording and also is supposed to edit the sound for the audiobooks that we're doing. But we're finding out very fast that he doesn't have time to do that. You know, he's got a family and a new baby and full-time job, and he gets up every morning. This is to his credit. We'll give the credit to the father because representing the son. No. And he's getting up every morning, and I'm going down there anywhere between 4 and 4:30 or so, and we're recording until 7:30, sometimes a little more, every single morning, you know, weekdays. And but we need somebody to edit the sound. And I just happened to find out that when Hannah was in her last year of high school, she was doing that kind of thing, and all the teachers said she was really good at it. They were ready to give her some scholarship or something. So now she's got a computer, and she's starting. And I think that what she just did shows that she's got a lot of talent, special talent. And she's got a lot of love for me. And so she's going to be able to edit this sound very nicely. That's my prediction. You know, I know that you're puffed up enough as it is. I don't want to puff you up any further, but just stay humble. Remember, the sign of advancement is we think we're less and less qualified. As we advance, we think we're less and less qualified. And when Radharani, who's the most advanced, well, of course, she's Krishna, his internal energy, but still, she's a person eternally. She's female. And her mood is every other living being is a devotee except for me. And that's why you don't put a woman in charge. Because they actually are in charge already. Hare Krishna. Did I get it or not? Did I get it? Did I get it? Hare Krishna. Therefore, Muchukunda, who was one of the greatest kings and warriors in the history of the universe, you know, he was such a good fighter that the demigods engaged him in fighting the demons, and he fought for such a long time. He became so tired. They asked him, "What benediction would you like?" He said, "I need to take rest. So give me an opportunity to take rest undisturbed. If anybody wakes me up, give me the potency to burn him to ashes with my eyes." So anyway, he went into a cave and he took rest. And Krishna very intelligently guided the Kalyavana, the demon that had come to fight with him, into this cave. And Kalyavana thought that the Muchukunda was Krishna, so he kicked him. And Muchukunda looked at him and poof, he burned into ashes. And then when Muchukunda saw Krishna standing there with a big smile on his face, I think, then he said, "Who are you?" And then he understood immediately who he was, and he started offering prayers to Krishna. And in those prayers, he said, "You know, actually, I was the most powerful warrior maybe in the history of the universe. But when I had to go into the inner chambers of my palace, I had to bow down to my queens." Wow. Case in point. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll stop here and thank all of you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Turn it around and show everybody who's here. Can you do this? Haribol. All the way around to show you what's going on here. There's Chris. There they are. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22. And a couple people have 24.
Rati sending 1,000 hearts.
Rati sent 1,000 hearts. That's 22. That's about that 50 for each of you. Okay. Hare Krishna. All right. King Prthu Maharaj ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow, same time, 4:30 Central Standard Time in Houston, Texas. Hare Krishna.